Hi, everybody. Welcome to Phil and Dave's Excellent Adventures. Just Dave here. Today I'm talking about the movie Dream Scenario. This is going to be a spoiler review, so if you have not seen the movie, you are concerned about spoilers, I would suggest you go and watch the movie first before you watch this review. So Dream Scenario is a movie about a man, played by Nicolas Cage, who all of a sudden starts showing up in a lot of people's dreams. And it's a very weird, surreal kind of story about fame, I guess, and sort of the pitfalls of it, the many kind of issues with it. Yeah, so as far as what I liked about the movie, Nicolas Cage I thought was great as Paul, the college professor who starts to appear in all these people's dreams randomly. I think it's one of the best performances that I've seen from Nicolas Cage, especially in a while. And I really liked it. He plays it kind of timid and quiet and a bit different than the kind of loud Nicolas Cage that you're used to seeing in a lot of movies. So I appreciated that. I really like Julianne Nicholson as his wife, Janet. Michael Cera as Trent, the marketing firm guy. I really like Dylan Gelula as his assistant Molly, who I know from she was Xanthippe in Kimmy Schmidt, and I liked her. I liked her character a lot, and I think she played it really well and was well cast there. Dylan Baker is Richard, his former friend who invites him to that party. All of them are great. Kate Berlant, even a lot of the kids, the played his daughters like Lily Bird and Jessica Clement. I think they did great jobs as his kid. I like the students in his class, David Klein and Kara Volchov stood out to me. I think that was who she was, Candace. Either way, yeah, all great performances. Really not a bad performance throughout the film. I think everyone kind of played their characters really well, especially the kids, his students in class. There was a part where they were kind of explaining having these dreams about him, and they would explain it, and everyone would kind of laugh and would sort of look embarrassed, but also like a little uncomfortable about it. And I just thought there was a lot of kind of nuance and subtlety to their performances that I really enjoyed. The same thing with his kids. They kind of played the annoyed kind of teenagers really well, and especially the kind of kids that the way you would expect kids to react if all of a sudden your dad became famous for no real reason. So I really enjoyed all of that. I like the score. It was by someone named Owen Pallett. They've worked with Arcade Fire a lot. The Mountain Goats, Taylor Swift, REM, Duran Duran. They did the score for her with William Butler from Arcade Fire and On the Count of Three, which is a movie that I really liked. As far as like the actual like music though, songs, traditional songs, there's not much in this that I noticed. They used the Cranberry song "Dreams" in the trailer, but I didn't notice it in the movie. If it was in there, I might have just missed it. But I think they did use the Talking Heads song "City of Dreams," which makes sense at the end there. I like the cinematography. It was by Benjamin Loeb. He did Sick of Myself, When He Finished Saving the World, and Mandy with Nicolas Cage. Yeah, I like When He Finished Saving the World. So I thought it looked well done. I don't really have many complaints about cinematography, honestly, unless it's bad fight scenes. But yeah, I liked it. I really like the humor in this throughout. There's a lot of very funny, kind of outlandish or just absurd kind of things that happen. And it was weird too. It was a cool theater because everyone in the theater was just at first when we were waiting for the movie to start, there was a kind of loud guy in the back and I like just speaking loudly. And I'm like, oh man, I hope this guy doesn't. But he laughed very loudly throughout the movie, but it didn't take away. It didn't annoy me. It actually kind of added to the movie. And there's a couple other people just laughing out loud at a lot of the just weird, silly, kind of absurd stuff that happens in the movie. And I appreciate it. But there's also some like kind of subtle jokes. And there's one in particular that I don't remember. But I remember getting it. It was one of those where they don't really explain the joke to you. It's kind of a like, what's the soup du jour? It's the soup of the day kind of thing where they don't really explain the joke. It just kind of happens. And I really liked it and I forgot what it was. But either way, that's great. Then there's also just a lot of weird, silly stuff like, him in the big David Byrne suit or him running around like trying to stab people and stuff like that. So yeah, really good, really funny, and just a delightful premise. I think just throughout, especially the first like half hour of this movie, I was just like smiling the entire time because it's just such a weird, crazy, silly, like fun scenario, and just watching Nicolas Cage and his family's reaction to it like happening and everything. It reminded me a lot of like some kind of early '90s movies. Just like I don't know, maybe like Dave, that movie where the guy becomes president, or like I don't know, like a blank check kind of thing or something, where like just something a movie like that where someone just randomly something happens to someone and they all of a sudden become famous or have a lot of money or whatever. Like that kind of stuff is cool. It's interesting. So I really really like that. I really like the attention to detail in this movie. So it really seemed like there was a lot of subtle kind of just small things with like the set design and like the props and like the way that they did stuff, just everything overall, just it was really really well done. I was really impressed by that. like I said, I really loved the first 30 minutes or so. I was like, this movie is great. I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 here. I mean, this is my favorite movie of the year. I really liked, especially the beginning, the husband and wife relationship when he first runs into that ex girlfriend who was also having, or I think it was the first person to tell him was having dreams about him. And his response was again very much like, oh, kind of flattered, and like, hey. And his wife was like, okay, what's going on here? Like, do I need to be worried? And he's like, no, I'm sure you're not. But even then, he mentions it, and she's like, no, not at all. But I really like the way that he and his wife interacted with each other. Just kind of this, like, kind of flirty, kind of fun, but also like a little like, hey. And then of course it does kind of set up later. This is a spoiler review. Other stuff that happens throughout the movie. But yeah, I really like that. I like the stuff with this book and the way he kept talking about zebras and like what they use their camouflage for, and it's to blend in. All of a sudden he's someone who is, not blending in. And it's actually the first lesson he gives in the beginning, because those kids are talking about him, about the dream they had about him. And he's like, see, that's why you shouldn't stand out. Like, that's what's going to happen. And then that's exactly what happens to him, and he doesn't learn his own lesson. It's almost like a sillier version of Tar in some ways. But I really liked it. I really liked all the stuff with Talking Heads, because I love the Talking Heads, and I like the ending. I like that he was, kind of able to get a somewhat happy ending, maybe, or a hopeful ending that gave the promise of, perhaps being happy in the future. So I did really like that. As far as what I didn't like about the movie, I like Nicolas Cage throughout. I thought he was great. It's one of the best performances he's given. But he is kind of doing this voice where it's like, oh, I'm kind of a nerdy guy, and I talk, from the back of my throat, and it's a nasally kind of voice. But then it kind of slips a little bit sometimes, just for me, and maybe I'm just overanalyzing it. And of course, real people's voices do that. But I think it's also just a little like, okay, that's not really your natural voice. And so like every once in a while he would slip into more his natural way of speaking. And I'm like, oh, there's Nicolas Cage. There you are. But throughout, it's mostly very good. But maybe it's just also a little distracting for me, because I guess I'm not really used to him seeing. He did like a little Raising Arizona. He did an accent in that, or Con Air. But he usually just sounds like Nicolas Cage. It's just, so I don't know. I also thought just all the stuff with the infidelity, I didn't like. I don't like that in general. I saw it happening. I saw it was very obvious when he gets on the elevator with Molly, and he's like, oh, I hope I've been behaving in my dreams. And she's like, you haven't been. I was honestly really just hoping they would just skip immediately to the scary dreams and him terrorizing people and stuff. But, it went the way that I kind of assumed it was going to go. And I guess it makes sense. He's a guy who hasn't really gotten a lot of attention, especially in the last, 10, 20 years or whatever. And a young girl all of a sudden is showing interest in him, and I'm sure the same thing could happen to a woman just as well. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it wasn't in. I wish it wasn't there in a way. And it's a funny scene, actually, the way it plays out, and he farts and then completely ruins it and farts again. All that was like pretty funny, and I actually really enjoyed it. But it in a cringy kind of way, but I almost just wish it didn't have to happen. And of course, that is what kind of, I think, makes it. They don't really explain anything in this movie, why it happened or why it stops or any of that. But it seems like, at least, that him doing that is sort of what triggered people's dreams to then become nightmares about him. And I sort of enjoyed that too, because it's kind of a moral kind of thing. Of course, maybe that's not what happened. Who knows? It's hard to say. But yeah, I also didn't necessarily love sort of the stuff with the dream bracelet. I thought it was okay. I kind of liked it. I liked the way they brought it all around and everything. But it is also one of those where, like, okay, before I guess the whole dream thing was kind of a supernatural kind of like weird kind of, okay, what's going on here? That's crazy. And then all of a sudden when you bring in these bracelets, now it becomes kind of sci-fi, and also kind of just I don't know. I'm just watching, going, okay, how does this work? That doesn't make any sense. What's going on? How is this guy able to do that? Like, I don't know. It's fine. I don't expect them to explain the whole thing. But I don't know. I didn't love it. And all the stuff with the influencers. It's fine. I like Amber Mid-Thunder. She's great. And Noah Centineo or whatever. But I don't know if I really needed all that stuff. But I did like the way that it tied back around, and that he did eventually, have he was able to appear in his wife's dream, and in the David Byrne, Talking Heads suit. So that's good for him, I guess. And I don't know. Was she messing around with her friend, with her coworker? Maybe. They don't really explain it. I feel like she probably wasn't, but it was weird that he was at the daughter's play. So I don't know. But again, I do actually really enjoy that it's not too explained for you, and there's a lot of kind of questions left out there. But yeah, I guess I was a little disappointed they broke up over it, because in a way it's just like they had a somewhat happy life. He was a little unsatisfied because if his book and his friend had stolen his idea. But yeah, I don't know. And at the end, he had this brush with fame and everything, and then his kind of life fell apart because he lost his job and lost his family or lost his wife. But he did get his book published, and he got a settlement from the university. So that's I don't know. It's a weird movie, but that's what I like about it. It's complicated and it's not super obvious. So yeah, it's directed by a guy named. Other than that, it's directed by a guy named Kristoffer Borgli. He's a Norwegian guy. He did something called Drib, DRIB, about a fake energy drink, I guess, and Sick of Myself, which I guess had the same cinematographer, didn't it? Yes. I haven't seen those. I think they are in Norwegian. So I don't know if I'll get around to watching them, but I'm interested. And for someone who's only done, one or two things before this, it's done very well. Very, I don't know how old the guy is, but it's done like someone who seems like they know what they're doing, and they've done it for a while. Also written by him, same guy. I believe he wrote the other two things. Budget on this was $2.5 million, so relatively low budget. Although I'm not sure where I got that number from, because I looked it up again, and I couldn't find it. So I might be wrong. The budget might be higher. I don't know how accurate that number is. Because if so, I figured that would be like mostly just Nicolas Cage. Like, did they pay him like $1 million, $1.5 million, and then the rest of it was just for the movie? Or I don't know. But so far, it's made about $4.6 million at the box office. So if that number is accurate, which it very well might not be, it's made its money back. And this isn't the kind of movie they expect to make a lot of money on. But yeah, if they did shoot it for that low, which I guess they could have, there's not a lot of big special effects or CGI. There's some stuff, stuff floating in the air, but you can do that with wires and just painting them out. That's not too expensive. So yeah, I don't know. It would be nice. I found recently a hard time finding budgets. I don't know what's going on with that. Maybe it's me. But Rotten Tomatoes on this, critics love it. It's at 92% from the critics. Audience don't like it quite as much. They're at 69%. Reading through some of the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes from the audience, it seemed like the people who didn't like it, their issue was that it was just too weird, or it wasn't what they expected. I know one person said they thought it was going to be a romantic comedy, and it wasn't. Which I can see, if you thought this was a romantic comedy and ended up being this, movie about infidelity and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, I can see why that would be a little upsetting, but I don't know why they thought it was a romantic comedy. I don't think I took it that way necessarily, but either way, it's an A24 movie, which, like I said, they've been hit or miss for me, but they've been mostly hit lately. And I think honestly, even the stuff I didn't like was probably just because I was like the people who didn't like this movie. I just didn't quite get it, maybe. But yeah, Aster also produced it along with Nicolas Cage. They originally wanted Adam Sandler, I guess, for this, which, okay, I can see that maybe, but apparently Borgli, the director, wanted Nicolas Cage, and I think it's a good choice. I think it works out well for him. It reminded me a bit of like Force Majeure or Triangle Sadness, the Ruben Östlund movies, because just the sort of style of humor, the kind of not exactly mean but dark humor, which he's a Swedish guy, this guy's Norwegian. I don't know if there's a similarity in the style of humor there or just something I'm imagining, but yeah. So yeah, as far as the score on this one, I think I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. I thought it was really good. It wasn't quite as good as I wanted to. I really loved the first like 30 minutes or so. I didn't necessarily like the sort of turn that it took there, although I understand why it would and it made sense. But yeah, I guess I wish I wanted something a little bit different. I would have really liked it if it was just a movie about like a happy couple who dealt with this together. But man, that's just me. But either way, great movie, really well done. I really enjoyed it, and it gave me a lot to think about. And it's kind of movie I saw it on Friday, and now it's Monday, and I'm still thinking about it. So that's a win in my book as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, 8 out of 10 is going to be my score on this one. But if you saw it, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great night. I will see you here again next week.